If that's the case, that'd be really fascinating to see that blow through inventory and
Yeah.
how it's going to impact value. I mean, that would be really, I'd want to dig into that.
Yeah, that's really, that had to come from a pretty strong use case in order to put that right in the software.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. Discrete manufacturing space is crowded with several solutions, but there are only a few that are really good at process manufacturing and agriculture verticals. The process manufacturing has unique nuances with requirements such as traceability, sublots, sub-batches, and formulation management. These verticals also have unique reporting and audit requirements. Managing them could be a challenge with a vanilla ERP, and it might turn out to be extremely expensive. So why is Sage X3 so good at food and agriculture verticals, and what are the unique features that matter for this industry? In today's episode, we invited a panel of industry experts for a live discussion on LinkedIn to conduct an independent review of Sage X3's capabilities. We covered many grounds, including their depth in the process manufacturing, their focus on finance, and why they are one of the few ERP systems in the market that have logistics capabilities. Finally, we discussed several unique features in the X3 solution, such as product families, rider management, multi-legislation, and multi-journal capabilities. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you're joining for the first time, this is part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We pick one vendor or the solution that we review independently. And for today, we have a very exciting solution. It's Sage X3. And we are going to have a lot of fun talking about that. So before we do that, we are going to start with everybody's intro. I am going to start with my intro. If you don't know me, I am Sam Gupta. I am principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm. We help our clients with system selection and implementation. On that note, I am going to Phil for his intro.
Hi, Sam. Hi, everybody. Phil Kerper, Managing Director of Ringling Business Solutions. We help executive leadership teams align their digital transformation strategy and their business strategies. I come to you after decades in the C-suite, implementing a lot of ERP solutions, and looking forward to the show.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Phil. Dave, can I move to you next for your intro?
Sure. Thanks, Sam. Hi, everybody. My name's Dave Chrysler, and I own an operations consulting company working with leaders in manufacturing, construction, and cannabis, helping them to create the systems needed to grow their business. And I come to you with more than 20 years in operations, in manufacturing, and implementing ERP and other systemization. So excited to be here with you, Sam, and everybody. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you for being here, Dave. Andy, can I move to you next for your intro?
Well, thank you so much, Sam, for inviting me. My name is Andy Pratico, and I have been in the ERP business specifically for small to mid-sized manufacturers for 4 decades. I've worked all over North America. I've worked with over 1,000 manufacturers in my career, and I have a published book on how to select ERP software, which I basically wrote through all the trials and tribulations I've had throughout my career, and hopefully it helps a few people. Thank you so much for the introduction, Sam.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Andy. And if you are in the audience listening to the show, if you have comment, question, make sure you guys post. We are going to be reviewing them. And we'll try our best to cover them during the show. If we run out of time, then our panelists are going to make sure that you receive your answers. On that note, I am going to provide quick briefing for the panelists about the Sage X3 software. And if you guys don't know where Sage X3 is positioned overall, it's sort of the mid to upper size company, software for Sage. It's the flagship software. It's their larger solution in their portfolio. For the most part, the way Sage approaches the market, they are really positioned for slightly more SME market, but this is going to be for the larger companies. It has one of the richest. Again, if you don't look at some of the larger ones, such as your SAP S/4HANA, Oracle, ERP Cloud, and Microsoft Dynamics 365 F&O, after that, I guess Sage X3 is probably going to have one of the deepest multi-entity functionality, and they define it from many different perspectives. That is going to be your multi-ledgers, multi-legislations. There are so many different terms that you are going to see, and that's what I like about Sage, the way they describe the whole multi-entity functionality, and there are always many different layers to it, but they are talking about a system that can work with many different ledgers, many different countries, many different currencies, many different regulations. So that's how big the solution is. But in Sage X3, when we are going to be reviewing the features, you are probably not going to see as much depth as we saw in the case of Microsoft Dynamics 365 F&O last week. So the depth is not going to be overall in terms of the operational functionality. It is going to have a lot of that depth from the mid-market perspective. But when you look at all of those complex allocation, commitment, encumbrance scenarios, Sage might have a lot of that from the mid-market perspective, but it's not going to be as deep, as compared to the larger ones. But Sage X3 is unique overall. The way the solution is structured, it is the only solution, especially when you look at that upper mid market, designed for process manufacturing. There are very few solutions in the market that do the process manufacturing really, really well. And in case of process manufacturing, we are going to look at very nuanced functionality, how the food and beverage, how the agriculture, verticals work overall in terms of when you look at the lot traceability, the way their auditing is done, the way their batches move on the production floor. It's very different ball. The way their formulation and recipes are going to be, the way they manage their expiry date, it's a different ball game altogether. And Sage X3 really is designed for that, process manufacturing vertical. Sage X3 is a legacy solution, so they have re-architected the solution on the cloud native architecture, but it's still a legacy solution the way your other solutions are going to be. For example, let's say if you compare this with Infor Cloud Suite Industrial or Apicor Kinetic, they all have had similar journey just because they are legacy, but they all have been architected to the new platform. So you are still going to have the same feeling, legacy feeling, because the underlying code base may still largely be legacy, but you are going to get, at least the bare minimum cloud features, meaning you can access on the mobile, maybe. But overall, the from the UI perspective, you might not feel much of a difference, but the solution is still legacy. It's not supposed to be born in the cloud. If you look at the competitive landscape for Sage X3, Sage X3 is also positioned in the discrete manufacturing verticals, but typically, it's not going to be as strong in the discrete manufacturing vertical, but it does compete with Epicor Connect, or your Infor Cloud Suite Industry. But from the size perspective, they both are probably going to be similar sized. Sage X3 is going to have far deeper finance functionality. Sage solutions in general are designed from the perspective of CFO. That's why you might get a lot of SAP feeling when you are going to be looking at Sage X3. So that's pretty much it for the briefing. Any comments? Did I not cover anything that we covered from the briefing perspective, guys?
Say, Sam, could you maybe just clarify, because they are mentioning Sage Business Cloud offering. So you're saying this wasn't born in the cloud and it's legacy. Could you clarify that? Is some of this cloud-based? Is it Access cloud-based, or is it all on-prem?
Yeah, so as you can see on the slide itself, it says the solution, the initial release was 22 years ago. And obviously, 22 years ago, you didn't have cloud. So that's why I am saying it as legacy solution. But then they have rebranded it as, Sage Business Cloud. You can call it cloud, but when you are a legacy solution, just calling cloud will not make you cloud native or born in the cloud. Sure, they have re-architected a lot. So from the marketing perspective, from the finance perspective, from the business model perspective, they have positioned it as the cloud solution. But when you look at the core product or the core technology, is it really born in the cloud? It's not. It's not supposed to be born in the cloud, but it is going to have enough bells and whistles, just like the way the other legacy solutions are in the. They are not necessarily born in the cloud. They might be, let's say, 60%, 70% re-architected. Some solutions are 100% re-architected. It's very rare to find those. In this particular case, it might be 70, 80, depending upon how much they have re-architected.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah, Sage purchased Adonix many years ago. And it was very popular in Europe. It says on your history that it's a French product.
Exactly.
But they purchased it as to be like previously Sage had a system called Sage 500, which was kind of their high-end manufacturing centric system, but it didn't have financials. It always integrated with somebody else's financials. So this was Sage's opportunity to get a system that was end to end and hopefully it target the North American market.
Yeah, amazing. Any other comments, guys? Okay, so I am actually going to move on to this one. So as you can clearly see, it's been a while since Sage acquired this product. So they acquired Sage Intacct, I believe, in 2018, if I recall the date correctly. So this was acquired somewhere in 2005. So it's been some time. So obviously, initially they were selling, and Andy, you can correct me if I'm off here, but I can almost guarantee that they were selling this on-prem significantly before they started selling on cloud. In fact, I think Sage really got on board with the cloud journey probably somewhere in 2016.
You're absolutely correct.
Before that, nobody cared for the cloud, to be honest. So, and that's probably the reason why they acquired Sage Intacct, because now they are in the cloud native and born in the. Here it says it briefly gained a longer name between 2017. So that's where they were trying to play with what is going to work for their cloud strategy. So the first thing that they did is, okay, I'm actually going to call all of my product cloud, and that's a lot of companies actually did that. Info did that as well, that they simply call all of their products cloud. Just by calling cloud is not going to make it cloud. Sure, I mean you may have re-architected, and they may be delivered in the cloud version, but still you have that legacy code base that you are carrying in the background. So here, as part of Sage's Business Cloud offering, and before returning it to its previous Sage X3 name, so they have gone back and forth overall from the branding perspective. And as Andy mentioned, that they actually purchased this from Adonix, which was the French company. There was a little merger there, and I think the merger was really for that food functionality that they got from another company. But end of the story is that they acquired this product, and it's a very legacy product. But right now, it is supposed to be the flagship product for Sage. Okay, so now let's look at the real depth of the feature set, and I am amazed, to be honest. I mean, one of the things that Sage really, really, really emphasizes on is going to be that you are going to notice is going to be those dimensions. Okay, they are really strong. We saw this in case of your Sage Intacct, and we are seeing this in case of Sage X3 as well. That the more the dimensions, and again, in my mind, Sage product was always designed from that finance perspective, which is what I personally appreciate in an ERP. And the reason why I appreciate is because ERP is supposed financial product. The more financial perspective it has, the superior it is going to be overall from the product perspective. And that's why I am slightly biased towards that financial perspective, because you actually get a lot of financial control because of that financial perspective, but not everybody likes that because everybody cares for their own perspective. For example, let's say if you speak to operations or supply chain, they only care for what they want to see, what they care for in their day job, as opposed to worrying about financial and accounting. But again, if you are buying an ERP product where everybody needs to be on the same product, then obviously that financial perspective is extremely important. So the terms that I was mentioning before is going to be multi-company, multi-site, multi-currency. Okay, multi-currency is easy, pretty much everybody has that. Multi-ledger. Okay, so multi-ledger is, again, that could be a very tricky functionality. Not every product is going to have multi-ledger, and you require that. Especially if the company is going to be large, and you have a lot of different financial processes depending upon how sophisticated your finance organization is. Multi-legislation, the way they are defining, I like the terms, because everybody else in the market, they typically bundle everything inside that multi-entity functionality. It could mean a lot of different things. And this is where I like the clarity that Sage is providing, that, okay, I am talking about multi-legislation, and they are saying ability to manage several companies located in different countries. In this case, local rules are applied depending upon the context. These rules can be defined using user designated settings or may include dedicated processes. Now, I don't know how globalized and localized Sage X3 product is, to be honest. I don't know if it is going to be as globalized and localized as those big three, but my assumption is going to be probably it's going to be closer, and it's going to have really strong multi-entity functionality, multi-legislation, I should refer to, as opposed to just saying multi-entity. But they are going to have extremely deep multi-entity functionality as well. Here they are saying each company is linked to an accounting model that defines the ledgers, and they have identified the limit of up to 10, which we haven't seen in any other system. The chart of accounts and dimensions can be shared or specific to several entities. Again, a lot of systems, what they do is they are going to call themselves as multi-entity, but typically they cannot really have different chart of accounts. So that's very constraining overall when you have multiple entities and they actually want to have different chart of accounts. So again, a lot of flexibility just because the solution itself is kind of big. Okay, if you guys have any comments, I can take those or move to the next one.
I just say on the flexibility here, there's a little bit of a philosophy on this as well. If for a global company, do they want to try to have global process standardization, or do they want to give flexibility? Chart of accounts in an area where that a lot of clients that I've worked with would tend to say we would rather not have a bunch of different charts of accounts. Well, maybe some subledger work, but we want it to be one global set. And here they're saying if that's not your philosophy, you got the ability to do a lot of really unique things based on the different companies that are in your portfolio. So that's a nice feature that you mentioned. SAP, S4HANA, they tend to drive more towards standardization. And these guys are giving you some real flexibility.
So I guess SAP, I think that must be the implementation advice. I can almost guarantee that SAP must allow the variation in the chart of accounts as well. Typically, they recommend that you share the chart of accounts so that your implementation cost is going to be lower. And that's what probably Sage is going to recommend as well, to be honest. In general, from the cost perspective, from the value perspective, you definitely want to have the standardized chart of accounts, but that should not be constrained by the system. System should allow you to have, let's say, if you have completely different and you don't really have chart of account that can really correlate with the corporate entity, sure, you are probably going to roll up and consolidate, but we have seen scenarios where they have a real business reason why they want to have this for that entity.
Yeah, you could have an acquisition scenario that would fit into that perfect. I mean, I could see taking some time during an implementation and acquisition to roll those up. So yeah, good flexibility.
Exactly, guys. So here, now let's talk about the journals, right? Even in case of journals, a lot of mid-market systems, they are going to say, you know what, I have everything that a mid-market or the larger companies are going to have. But when you get into the specifics of defining the number of journals, right? So here you have sales, purchase, inventory, and when you have a lot of transactions happening, you definitely want that distinction. Otherwise, it becomes very hard. In fact, this might be trickier in systems such as Acumatica, which is considered to be, one of the best right now. But when you look at the segregation of these ledgers, it's very, very hard to find in those systems. The slightly larger mid-sized systems might have this, and that's why Infor Cloud Suite Industrial is probably going to be bigger than your Acumatica. because it's going to have these ledgers, and that can work with the larger companies, right? And systems such as Acumatica or uh, even smaller systems are probably not going to have. So that's where the real differentiation is when we look at, okay, very small, small, medium, upper, medium, large. Uh, yeah, the closed journals, independent of period closure, again, very neat piece of functionality. Again, we are not looking at the kind of depth that we saw in case of Microsoft Dynamics 365. That's a different game. They had a lot of different features typically that are going to be required by the enterprises. But here we are looking at very upper mid market centric functionality as opposed to those features that we saw in that case. You have propagation rules between ledgers. Again, very neat finance functionality that would be handy for a lot of different companies that probably does not exist in a lot of different smaller systems. What else am I looking at here? The overall the way business partner functionality works, a lot of smaller systems might not have that, and you have a lot of different nuances the way business partner functionality works, and that drives your master data. If you are going to have very, very, very complex customer hierarchy or vendor hierarchy, it becomes extremely challenging in these smaller systems. So here you have number one, unique. And again, the I have seen a lot of different manufacturing systems. Even they don't have this. Okay. So here we are talking about unique business partner identification, additional information based on roles, customer, supplier, carrier. I've never seen that before. So this is the first time I'm seeing carrier as your business partner, factor, and sales rep. Okay, so the three that I have personally seen is going to be customer, supplier, and probably employee. Here you are seeing a lot more. I have not seen how that is going to be used, but seems like a neat functionality when you are going to be having a person who is playing many different roles and they are going to be participating in transaction. So if you don't have this functionality, you are going to have issues when you are splitting the sales comp between your sales employee versus the external, the third party vendor or the rep. This could become an issue, and that's why this piece of functionality is extremely important. um, Unique number of addresses. We have seen cases where sometimes the addresses could be very limiting in a lot of different systems. They might have just one. The CRM systems hardly have like a couple of addresses. So here you have unlimited number of addresses, which would be a neat piece of functionality that I noticed in this. That's pretty much it. Do you guys have any comments?
I just think that last business partner section is really impressive. Like you said, I don't know that I've seen that in a basic description of an ERP, and typically that takes some work, to pay commissions to sales reps and things like that, or connect them. If that's what that allows, that's really impressive.
Exactly. In this functionality, you are going to get an SAP. SAP has very, very, very deep business partner functionality. Other systems that are not very financially savvy. And that's why I like Sage, because it's very, very, very financially savvy. Other operational systems that are going to be designed either from supply chain perspective or manufacturing perspective, they are not going to have all of this unless you are talking about enterprise systems.
100%.
Okay, anything else, guys? So here we saw the commitments in case of your budget, and again, that's a very neat piece of functionality. We have seen other mid-market systems struggling overall with the budget and commitment functionality. So this is typically found in very large systems. So again, this is very unique, and the reason why Sage will have this is because they are also selling in a lot of different public sector organizations, and they typically need very deep budgeting functionality. Then we have the standard inquiries, and again, the whole budget piece is very deep, with the commitments and the actuals and comparing it. Oh my goodness, it could get real deep when you are fighting inside your company. You definitely need a process there, otherwise it could be crazy. Okay, and you can take or move to the next one. So here, and again, I found some more neat pieces of functionality. Leased and rented equipment is very hard to find in a lot of different systems, and the reason why these guys have this is because typically in the food business, you are going to have very involved logistics as well. That's been my observation in general. So typically, the food businesses, they are going to have very deep warehousing processes. They are going to have very deep TMS and logistics processes. And that's where your leased and rented equipment is going to be super handy from the finance perspective. And that's probably the reason why these guys have that. Franchised asset management. Now, this is very unique as well for equipment made available to the company by a franchisor. So, when you are working with these food chains, you are going to have very franchise business model. A lot of systems can claim that they can work in the franchise business model, but when you look at the nitty gritty of the functionality, it becomes very deep overall how the assets are managed in the franchised setting. So here they are saying management of franchise Okay, I have personally not seen franchise contracts, and I can almost guarantee that those contracts are probably going to be different. Riders, and Dave, you are going to be asking me a question, and before you ask, I'm actually answering that. I have no clue what that. Okay. If you guys know, tell me, but I have never seen that term before. Calculation and posting of provisions of renewal of franchise assets, and traceability of renewals. Never seen that before. So which is very interesting piece of functionality. And by the way, one of the things that I missed here is going to be generally a local authority. So franchisor is the local authority, and I don't know where that connection is coming from, but that's again, I find that fascinating that there is something going on there that I don't understand and seems like a deep process.
So we have a question, Sam, that applies to the financial area. So maybe this is a good spot to slot that in before you move on.
Yeah.
And Andrews Green is asking, acknowledging that this is the financial section, this may come later. This is the question: from multi-company setups, how common is it that end users want to share vendors, customers, items between company instances, or does the crossover of that lower level of data really happen? So I've read this, if I understand the question of can you segregate? Yeah, let's say you have 500 vendors and you've got 4 different companies, and you just want one company to have exposure to 100 of those suppliers, for example. And my experience is, yes, you can segregate that or include it when you've got software like this that is giving you multiple entity type of items. But he's asking it in a way is, how often does someone ask for that functionality? So I don't know if anybody else interprets that question different than I did.
I am going to have a comment there. So typically, in my experience, honestly speaking, when you are going to have the real smart people who really know how to find synergies between the entities, that's when they are going to do all of that. A lot of companies, they just don't care for sharing the vendor and customer data. Sometimes you are not going to have a cloud. Okay, the reason why you are not going to have a cloud is because that is driven by your customers and the vendors, and the customers are going to ask, okay, I am looking for this discount and I am transacting with these many entities, so you have to do this. And sometimes you just don't have, you have to do that because the customer is asking, and then you have to share. And when you share for one, then sharing for others, so then you probably require that. And depending upon how big that customer is, sometimes vendors drive that process. So it's common, and Dave, you might have far more experience than I do in this.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with where you're coming from on it. I mean, in my experience, it typically, that data is shared, but again, it's going to be business specific. It's going to be dependent on, how many locations, what the model is, all of that. So considerations to be had, but, I didn't have much to add beyond what you said.
Yeah, and the other thing that I would think that customer and vendor are not going to be the actual driver of the shared data among entities. It's always going to be the item, especially if you are a very involved manufacturing company, then you are going to be looking at, okay, I'm producing this part here. Okay, if I produce there, sometimes supply chain actually drives that. So item typically is going to be far bigger driver, because that actually drives your inventory, and inventory is going to be all over the place if you're simply going to be duplicating these SKUs. When they are really the shared component or part. So you might take shortcuts, but then you'll struggle in having the inventory. So inventory is far bigger driver in my experience, but it could be customer or vendor as well. Anything else, guys, before I move
Hopefully that answered the question, or he can certainly post a follow-up. We'll keep an eye out.
Thanks, Phil. Okay. So here, now let's look at the supply chain management. And in the supply chain management as well, the features that you are going to see here are going to be extremely unique. You are not going to find all of these in a lot of different discrete manufacturing solutions or the distribution solutions. So here they are saying in stock or not, management of serial numbers, lot numbers, very common. But what is not common is sublot numbers. Okay, sublot numbers is extremely different in food and beverage, and companies need that. Because they might have the traceability requirements overall from the pharma perspective, food perspective, the way you are reporting, audit might drive that. So again, this is really designed for that food and beverage and agriculture. That's why you have a lot of different features that are going to be applicable to that space. Version numbers, major and minor, you have BOM refs in discrete manufacturing solution, but you don't really have the version number. Again, that's a very specific process manufacturing function. Then you have the commercial products, service provision, and subcontract provision. Again, that's very, very unique piece of functionality. Product reference, product description, units, minimum purchase quantities, customizable by supplier. I don't think I have seen that in a lot of different systems unless we are talking about very large systems. Identification of direct labor, direct order suppliers by product, identification of direct order suppliers by product. Again, very unique in my mind. Inquiries with audit trail ranging from general to detailed. Any of the audit trail, if you're looking at the pharma space, food, agriculture, they require for deeper audit trail in general. So a lot of companies might claim that they have audit trails, but I don't know how sophisticated they are going to be. And again, the pharma and food space is very, very, very different. Product install base inquiry is another one that I find it slightly fascinating, which I have not seen in a lot of different mid-market solutions. So this is, and I can see where that would be used, especially if you're a medical device company. You probably would need that. Comments?
Sam, can you? I had a question about that just because I've not seen that that terminology used again. Can you describe what that would be utilized for in the medical space then?
Which one? The product installed base?
Yeah, the installed base inquiry.
So the install base. So let's look at some of the machines. For example, let's say if you have the cancer machines and that are being installed at many different hospitals.
Got it. When it comes online.
Yeah,
Got it.
Exactly. Okay, so if you don't have any other comments, I'm actually going to move to the next one. So here we have some other, and again, when you look at the process manufacturing space and food space, it's very unique because it's going to have a lot of different process features. It's also going to have some of the discrete features because you have the packaging that goes along with your food. So sometimes a system may have discrete and process features from the formulation BOM perspective, but they are designed for a specific purpose. So in this particular case, it's saying packing unit with fixed or variable conversion factors. Again, very, very unique piece of functionality that you're not going to find in a lot of different manufacturing software. Configurable unit conversion rules for taking from another unit, unpacking, incomplete unit management, unit splitting. Again, very, very, very specific. Yeah, I have not seen that anywhere else. Configurable price structure by supplier. And this is where, so a lot of companies claim that they have the configure to order functionality, but configure to order functionality also varies when you go from industry to industry. For example, let's say if you are looking at the industrial manufacturing or industrial distribution space, the kind of variables they are going to have as the configurable products are going to be very different compared to how your food products is going to be, or how your mattress products are going to be, or how your cars are going to be. So here we are saying configurable, price structure by supplier. Again, I don't think I have seen that before. Configurable multi-criteria prices.
Well,
And I don't know if
Sam, isn't that just saying unique pricing per vendor?
Well, where I get that one, because that one is confusing a little bit. So if you're buying the same product from two different suppliers, supplier A is selling you that for $50 and supplier B is selling you that for $65.
Right.
Typically, you'd have to do something on the SKU level to manage that.
Exactly.
And you'd have to have SKU 123A and SKU 123B. This is implying to me that it's a single SKU and you can manage two different prices because of the supplier reference that's tied in the SKU definition, which is pretty unique, pretty interesting.
If that's the case, that'd be really fascinating to see that blow through inventory and how it's going to impact value. I mean, that would be really, I'd want to dig into that.
Yeah, that's really, that had to come from a pretty strong use case in order to put that right in the software.
Yeah, but guys, this is very much needed in the distribution space. Distributors need that because they are going to have a lot of different vendor rebates, vendor discounts. Each of these SKU that they carry from the vendor, even though it is going to be the same product, it's going to have a very different pricing algorithm for each of the vendors.
And it is a workaround to manage that on the
Exactly.
SKU level or to manage that on a variance level.
Exactly.
It does complicate the inventory management on the other side of that for sure.
Yeah. Configurable multi-criteria prices. I don't know if it is simply just a bunch of different criteria for the prices, but it sounds different. Price management by currency coefficient, quantity, and configurable formula. Again, when you look at the depth of the formulation techniques, when you look at the PLM functionality for the process manufacturing, the way R&D is done in some of these food facilities, testing facilities, it gets really deep. Okay, it's a very different business. People try to compare the discrete with the process manufacturing. It's not the same. It's really not the same. It's very, very different. The whole manufacturing process is different. The whole R&D process is very different. You have intercompany prices. Again, very unique piece of functionality. And yes, it does matter a lot. When you are transacting between the entities, depending upon how sophisticated you are in your finance organization. Prices applicable by date slots, promotions. So I have seen a lot of different promotional pricing, but date slots, again, it's a different level. Prices applicable by line and by document, that's common.
What does by date slots mean?
So my understanding would be that you have a real matrix of the date as opposed to selecting just one date. So typically what you could do is you can have, let's say, for this date, you have this price, for this date, you have this. But my understanding is there is going to be that you are probably able to select sort of the range, probably, that's how I would interpret.
I
And
think
typically,
most systems can do that. Promotions?
it's tricky, Andy. It's
Is it?
not as easy. Yeah, it's not as easy. Sometimes it's so tricky that companies don't even use the ERP pricing. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So here, discount and cost by line, by order as a value, percentage as the cumulative total cascaded. Very interesting. Simulation of pricing application. Now, this is mind blowing to be honest. This is where a lot of companies struggle. They don't use, and I'm going back to my point that companies don't use pricing because they cannot simulate. It's very, very, very hard for them to understand. Okay, you have these 50,000 rules that I'm specifying, and I don't even know how to basically trace back what I had configured to begin with. So it's very, very hard for them to understand the different layers of pricing, and it gets really complicated. So here, if you have some sort of simulation, that's supplier catalog import, probably companies can do that, but that functionality is very lean in general in the system. So if they have something better, obviously that's going to be super handy. Purchasing cost management can include supply chain cost in total. Again, landed cost is always very tricky to work with. In general, systems are very limited. So my understanding is going to be this is probably going to be slightly better. No, this is not unique. This is all good. If you guys have any other comments, I can take those. Otherwise, I can move. The logistics is always fascinating for me because I have never found a system that can handle logistics really. I just don't know any ERP system. So here, since this is really designed from the food perspective, my understanding is going to this is slightly better overall in the logistics functionality, but they really struggle. Most companies, when they are going to have very involved logistics, they typically end up choosing some sort of WMS, TMS dedicated as opposed to relying on ERP. Obviously, that integration is probably going to be a nightmare. You probably need to have $1 million in your bank account unless you are buying a pre-integrated software. But if you have this could be handy if you can manage with this. I am getting, the rider management is fascinating for me. I don't know whether that is coming from logistics. If it is coming from logistics, maybe they have really deep logistics. Prepayment management is always tricky, okay? Especially when you are talking about international supplier management. It's a nightmare. And seems like they have a lot about prepayment. So seems to be really deep overall in the order management and supply chain management functionality, the way the product seems to be structured. Okay, product family is another thing that we saw in case of SysPro, which is sold in the food space as well. You are not going to see product family anywhere else. So that is your indication that the product is designed for food. You will not see that anywhere else. And again, the whole product family analysis gets very deep from the finance perspective, the way you are going to structure your SKU. So it's a very different piece of functionality.
Is that
Average
different for a product group, Sam?
no, product family is different.
Is it?
Product
That's
group,
what I'm asking you. It's different, is it?
yeah. That would be my understanding. The whole product family is the way you actually design your SKU. So you are probably going to have a number for the family. That would be my understanding, unless they are simply rebranding it as the product code. Product code is just a bunch of settings that you are grouping together at the item
The
level.
GL
That doesn't mean anything.
attachment.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
That's anybody has that. That probably you're
Yeah.
going to find an ingenious ERP. But here we are talking about slightly deeper the way your sales planning is going to be, the way your item planning is going to be done. For the food business, they typically forecast at the item family level. They don't have time to forecast for each individual SKU. That's where this is a very tricky piece of functionality. Typically, you are going to be utilizing another SNOP system to be able to do that. But even in that case, it becomes really tricky to correlate. So if they have built as part of the product, that's very. In terms of the valuation, average lot cost, again, very interesting. You are not going to see the inventory valuation based on your lot. So again, that speaks that it is really designed for food business. Last purchase price and simulated cost. Last purchase price is also very, very, very tricky in general, even in case of the manufacturing software, and they are able to provide that, which is mind blowing. Traceability, always tricky. You need very, very, very deep traceability. If the system is not really designed for that, you are never going to get traceability right. Sometimes you don't care because you are never audited, or even if you are audited, you got lucky, so you don't have to care. But typically, if you are really doing the right things, you need the forward and backward tracing, from your lot perspective, and that has to happen on your production floor. Typically, on the production floor, 70% of the companies that I have seen, they all mix up their lots. Nobody cares for it, but they all mix up their lots. It's never tracked. So yeah, but I mean, again, if you are doing this for pharma, I don't think you will pass the audit. So if you are pharma or food business, the traceability is going to be far more important.
One of the other things I saw on there, Sam, you didn't have it highlighted, but I don't recall seeing this in many other systems, is on that last bullet point, the stock and transfer and transit inquiry between sites or even intercompany, which I thought was pretty interesting. I don't know if you've seen that in a lot of other systems.
Yeah, stock and transfer transit inquiry, you will find probably that in the manufacturing. What did you say, Andy? Have you seen that?
Yeah, it's a fairly common feature. It's not too rare.
But depending upon how that is built, I guess, depending upon, let's say if you have the real in-transit functionality, for example, SAP has very deep in-transit functionality.
Right.
Sometimes,
it depends what you mean.
yeah,
Exactly.
sometimes they are simply saying okay, it's a virtual warehouse. I'm going to
Sometimes
create
there's a field that says it's in transit.
Exactly.
That's enough.
Yeah,
Most of them are that way. Versus an SAP would be detailed about everything regarding the shipment and everything else.
Dave, go ahead.
No, that's what was in my mind, is if that functionality, I guess, was much deeper, just based off of the rest of the infrastructure, how they've laid this out. Seems to me like that may be some additional capability beyond what you would typically see. So I was just curious.
Yeah, and by the way, this is a real pain, guys. This is a real pain. So if they have something related to that, that's going to be fascinating for companies. Okay?
And they're calling that inquiry. So it reads as a tool for you to get good understanding of inventory that's in transit.
But they are going to be able to do the inquiry if they have data underneath. If we don't have data,
100%. Yeah, 100%. Typically, that inquiry is a side report. You know it left, and it hasn't arrived, right?
Exactly.
You run an exception report to see what's out there, but this looks like it's, like you say, it's a lot deeper, a lot more useful in order to get that information. And like you say, the data's got to be there.
Well, yeah, because when you're running, your inventory reports and you're looking for replenishment, if this has the ability to tag into that, in a streamlined functionality versus it being some sort of an exception, or to your point, yeah, it's left, it's not here, we don't have it, but somebody has to know that information, somebody has to count for that information, versus if it's something much more integrated. I was just curious because I felt like the beginning part of this with the infrastructure that with all the multi-entity that it talks about, I thought maybe perhaps this could be some extended functionality. So
well, and to that point, David, they're really spending a lot of time in a couple of these sections on that inter-site, intercompany transactions and all of that. And so, it implies, and especially how specific these lists are, it implies they've got some very strong functionality there.
So here, if you look at the quality assurance, again, quality assurance is going to be extremely deep for the food and process manufacturing. So here we are talking about sub-batch number management, guys. Okay, you are not going to find sub-batch number management in the other manufacturing software. So that says that it is the food and beverage software. Used by date management, again, you are not going to find that. This is very specific to agriculture and food business. Then you have the stock status update, accepted, rejected, inspected, probably not a big deal. Reinspection date management is probably a bigger deal. That probably, and they require that from the audit perspective. That's why they have that. Stock sub status management, never seen that before. That's a big deal if they have that. Expiry date management, again, very tricky in these smaller systems. They don't have as slick functionality as far as the expiry date management goes, and it gets very deep the way your transactions are performed. Some companies can't even default the expiry date, and anytime you are going to introduce the lots in your system, and now you are introducing your number of touches by, I don't know, by 50, I guess. So it becomes very tricky if you don't have really slick expiration management. Upstream and downstream traceability management, very, very unique and useful for the food and beverage and pharma verticals. Creation of returns by selecting receipt lines and direct entry. So you might be able to create the return for the whole document, but by selecting the receipt lines, that might not be available in a lot of different smaller systems. Pre-commitments and commitments with budget control. We saw that they have really deep budget control and the prepayment as well. We have already discussed that. Some more here. Reinspection date management we have already covered. Grouping of locations in warehouses. I have not seen that before in an ERP system, in a WMS. It might be there. License plate number, we saw that in case of Rootstock. These guys also have that. Again, you are going to find that in the systems that are really designed for that food and beverage FMCG distribution company. So this is your sort of differentiator, that if you are a FMCG sort of distribution company, then you probably need that, not so much for the industrial distribution. So again, that's your metric to assess whether the product is really designed for food and beverage or for the industrial distribution. Sampling management. Oh boy, that's a nightmare in general. Okay, so typically either that is going to be handled outside of the system, and there are a lot of different compliance issues because of sampling. To be honest, so if you have that as built, or if that is built as part of your system, that's going to make the life of, let's say, if you are a wine distributor or you are, food distributor, sampling management is always a nightmare to manage. So again, it says that, it is really designed for that food and beverage vertical and the agriculture. The logistics is always fascinating for me, because I have, as I said, never seen logistics functionality really good. But here they are talking about load preparation management. You may have container management, but when you talk about the real deep load preparation management by shipment date and the way you are going to be loading your trucks, it gets really deep, and you need a TMS system if you want to do that. But seems like in their case, they have a much deeper logistics functionality to be able to manage a lot of your logistics processes. And again, you don't have to deal with the integration. Here you are getting as part of the system, which is a big deal. Some more here, allocation of a reorder policy. Seasonality, guys, it's mind-blowing. It's very, very, very difficult. And most food businesses, they require seasonality. If you're a cosmetic, manufacturer, you probably require that. Multi-production unit, bill of materials. Here you have many different ones. Commercial productions are very common. Subcontracting, it could be tricky with subcontracting. Mass maintenance, smaller systems, you are not going to find that, because the kind of lift that has on the in general. Version number management is extremely tricky. Parent routing sheets, I have no idea what that is. And that's very fascinating, how that is done. And most likely this must be related to the product families, guys. And that's where you have the hierarchy. And I told you that the hierarchy is really, really deep. The way you sort of produce your goods in the food and beverage manufacturing, even for bakery, it could be extremely tricky the way you produce these goods, because there's a real parent-child relationship the way your product is going to move on the production floor. So that's why that functionality is very, very unique. So I am actually going to stop right there, and I'm going to open up the floor for the commentary and discussion.
Hey, Sam, before we get into that, Sneha had a question back on the logistics, and I don't think it was really clear on the slide, but maybe you know. Her question is, does this mean the integration with the third-party logistics as well, or just internal container management?
So my understanding is going to be this is going to be really the ERP functionality in doing the container management. So typically, if you are going to have a third-party TMS or WMS system, they sort of hijack the process. Okay, so they hijack at the point of shipment. Once the shipment is created, okay, now I as an ERP, I'm done. Okay, once you ship, just send me the tracking number. I'll probably store. And now this is your deal. Whatever you do, that's not my deal. Okay, that's how the WMS TMS systems work. Here we are talking about literally creating the load itself inside the ERP system. We have seen that in the case of your Microsoft 365 FNO. And if that is part of your ERP system, sometimes, again, the integration is very tricky. I don't know, Phil may have more comments there. I don't know whether he has used the real ERP to be able to manage, or if you use TMS, WMS, but integration is a nightmare if it is not pre-integrated.
Yeah, commonly it's an integration with another system, for that functionality. But like you say, when you look at the S4 HANA product and the Oracle product, they are definitely saying that it's in there, and that they have that functionality, and saying you do not need Agility or another piece of software on the back end of that thing in order to do that functionality. So they're claiming it's there. I don't know that I've seen it fully work yet, but they're claiming it's there.
No, SAP WM is very sophisticated product. There is no doubt about that. So SAP is definitely.
Yeah, I'm sure they have it. What my question is what really out of the box and what really does need to be configured, because there's just a lot. Even if you go get another third party, there's a lot of configuring on that side of the house. It's usually very specific.
Like most of these systems that are relatively industry specific, which X3 sort of is. It's designed for batch processing manufacturing and process manufacturing. They end up always trying to expand their footprint by going into other markets, discrete manufacturing, mixed mode manufacturing, and they'll give it the perception that it can fit those industries just fine. I was watching an analysis of X3 about 2 months ago, done by TEC, Technology Evaluation, and they had a couple of the dealers on the presentation. So I asked a question, very simple. I said, "What's your target market? What size of company and what type of manufacturer?" And they came back specifically. They said large, by the way. They didn't say medium. They said large process manufacturers. They're very specific. Even though I run across them in a lot of other industries as well, watching the presentation today just totally confirms me how strong it is for process, and probably not as strong in a lot of other industries.
And they seem to know where they live too. It's probably just under that big three, but it's got a lot of very powerful features similar to the big three. And the way they list their features is super specific to either that process manufacturing or certain type of features that those types of customers have been asking for.
I would say definitely one of the more detailed from that perspective, Phil.
It's impressive. If that's the company or the client, process manufacturing, multi-entity, that really needs to get above a little bit the mid-market solutions.
Here's your ticket.
This is definitely is an impressive set of feature sets, no doubt.
Yeah.
We didn't get to screenshot, Sam. I don't know if you had a chance to look at some. But what did you think, if you've experienced it, Andy? Maybe you don't know this of the UX. Does it look like a legacy system, or does it look like a cloud-based system with a more modern UX front end?
Well, from the screens I've seen, I think it's modern looking. I mean, when they purchased Adonix, of course, it was an older legacy type system, but I think they've done a lot with the GUI, and it at least looks modern.
I guess the trick question is going to be, okay, what is the degree of modernness, right? I mean, that's what I like to define the real.
What are you comparing it to?
Yeah. And when you put a screen up in front of Sam, he immediately gets all excited that he wants to dig into how much is on the screen and what's in that upper corner and what does the menu look like, and he starts architecting in the back. He's writing code in the back of his head.
If they can deliver on the functionality that was presented here, though, Phil, I mean, back to kind of what Sam said early on in terms of what they must have had to redevelop to be able to deploy that amount of functionality in, the cloud-based side of things. I mean, they had to have taken that into consideration. So to be able to deliver, to me, to be able to deliver on this level of functionality from a legacy system, that in and of itself, I feel like is impressive. And I would say that just based on this, it seems like the functionality is deeper than some of the other systems that we've reviewed so far. So,
yep, they're living on the top end. Like I said, maybe below the big three, but certainly in that next layer. And David, it's a good point. That's a lot of work to take that from on-prem legacy and put that level of functionality into the cloud in the amount of time that they've had. That's a pretty mature product if all of that is available in this version, which they're very clear. They're not talking in doublespeak here. They're pretty clear on what the functionality is.
All right, guys, so we are close to our time now. Unless you guys have very, very short comment, I can take those, or I need to close.
Andy has something that's going to take 40 seconds to say.
No, I don't. Go for it, Sam.
All right, guys. So if you are the process manufacturing, I think we have had the consistent theme overall. If you're a food manufacturer, beverage, it's going to be, any of the agriculture worlds, the Sage X3 amazing product. That is going to be your product. That is going to be slightly more upper mid market. You can probably start at roughly $100 million, and you can get to before you switch on to one of the biggest ones, Sage X3 amazing product. So make note of that. And if you joined for the first time, this was part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We pick one vendor or the solution that we review independently. So make sure you guys are not going to miss next week's show. We are going to be here. On that note, thanks everybody for your time and insight tonight.
Thanks everybody. Thanks Sam.
Thanks Sam. Thanks everybody.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Dave Chrysler, head over to thechrysler.club. It's THECRYSLER.CLUB. If you want to learn more about Andy Pratico, head over to ESSoft.com. It's ESSOFT.com. If you want to learn more about Phil Kerper, head over to ringlingbusinesssolutions.com. It's RINGLINGBUSINESSSOLUTIONS.com. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, you might want to check other related episodes, including the interview with Rich Said, who describes his journey and the pitfalls of implementing 6 ERP projects throughout his career. Also, the interview with Gabriel Panescu, CEO of Now Logic, who discusses the nuances of the agriculture and poultry business and how the manufacturing processes are different from other industries. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.